Howdy and welcome again to the Film Memo Recaps. Today we're going to recap a 2025 film titled Sniper: The Last Stand. Please be suggested that there can be spoilers in advance. The movie starts off evolved with a collection of unique squaddies called the Phoenix Crew getting into a tunnel to finish a high-risk undertaking. Their aim is to penetrate the headquarters of an unlawful fingers trafficking syndicate in Costa Verde. After quick disarming a shield they benefit get admission to the CCTV gadget and manage it to their advantage. Meanwhile Brandon and Zondi, snipers from the Phoenix Crew, wait outdoor for a sign from their teammates in the tunnel. Moments later the sign arrives and Brandon and Zondi cautiously pick their goals earlier than performing. As the Phoenix Crew emerges from the tunnel they rush the Mafia stronghold, dispersing to finish their numerous assignments. They silently get rid of every enemy one at a time. However, one of the Mafia contributors acknowledges that their headquarters is below assault. He hurries to alert his corporation approximately the trouble. Knowing this, Kovalev, the brutal Mafia chief, fires numerous rounds into the air, putting off an alarm to warn his guys of the invaders. Chaos ensues as Kovalev's guys scramble into movement, ensuing in a brutal gunfight on the opposite facet of the battlefield. Of Kovalev's snipers try and kill Brandon and Zondi, however Zondi notices their area simply in time. He and Brandon paintings collectively to neutralize the threat. Kovalev and one and every of his final minions try and reposition themselves, even as preventing again. Desperate, Kovalev telephones his best friend, the top minister, who is involved in his operations, and asks for brief reinforcements. Unexpectedly the top minister informs him that backup might arrive inside 1 to 2 hours. Recognizing the gravity of the scenario, Kovalev unleashes an effective new weapon created via way of means of his guys, a closing hotel device designed to wreck the whole lot if they're trapped. Soon after, the Phoenix Crew correctly surrounds Kovalev and his most effective final best friend. Kovalev, defiant, proclaims that he's going to wreck all people at the equal time. A big surprise wave hits the room, knocking all people inclusive of Kovalev and his guys to the floor. The scene shift stays in advance with a dragonfly-like plane touchdown on Costa Verde's bleak terrain. Brandon abruptly exits the plane to help with the challenge. At that factor, a commander named Modus welcomes Brandon and expresses gratitude for his coming. Modus, famous that Brandon's reputation sniper talents are a treasured addition to their squad. As an end result of Modus, guys inclusive of one named Nova enthusiastically greet Brandon as they journey to the bottom. Nova narrates his U.S. lousy beyond. He confesses that his uncle, who's now the top minister, betrayed and murdered his father, who as soon as ruled the U.S. His uncle collaborated with a Russian mafia lord to create advanced weaponry technology. If perfected, those guns ought to permit for invasions of different international locations. When Brandon arrives at the bottom, he reunites together along with his antique pal Zero. The CIA's director, Brandon Zero explains, has been referred to as in to help with inside the seas of Kovalev, the Russian mafia lord who has lengthy furnished unlawful weaponry to America's enemies. However, Kovalev's energy has extended due to his collaboration with the top minister. This growth of his energy makes him a good extra ambitious hazard. Zero then introduces Brandon to the guys on the bottom. They will shape an unmarried crew to defeat Kovalev. Soon after, Modus introduces a younger guy named Zondi, a skilled however green shooter who's but to kill absolutely everyone. Following the introductions, the crew starts schooling as though they're already with inside the mob boss's lair. Zondi improves his taking pictures abilities with Brandon's assist. After the schooling consultation, Zondi asks Brandon what the maximum hard factor of being a sniper is. Brandon responds that taking a lifestyles for the primary time is the finest mission because it forces one to confront the enormity of disposing of a person's lifestyles. That then speak the format of the room they'll be attacking. Modus and his deputy speak the goal, assigning particular duties to every every soldier. Modus proudly named their unit Phoenix. A few hours later the soldiers bring together to unwind and devour dinner. One of them asks Modus who the primary character he recruited become. Modus admits that it become his deputy Angel. He is going on to explain Angel's outstanding bravery in a disagreement with terrorists despite being outnumbered and stabbed 12 instances. Angel fought again together along with her naked arms and finally defeated her attackers. When the troops listened as they anxiously urge Angel to reveal them the true wounds, which she humbly obliges. After lunch, Brandon's strategy squaddies, who typically seem collectively and asks approximately their marital repute, they provide an explanation for that their siblings now no longer a pair. When Brandon asks in the event that they use axes in a combat, they verify it. They are called the dual axes due to the fact they constantly make use of their trusty axes as a closing desire weapon. The subsequent day, Zero inquires as to what Angel is running on. Angel then discloses that she is drawing a caricature for her daughter who she hasn't visible in a long term. Later, Modus gathers all the troops to present a motivational speech, nevertheless an improvement. However, Kovalev warns that they may be all an extreme threat for the reason that High Minister's militant forces are approximately to reach, and the sonic wave will rapidly reason. A cataclysmic response true to his phrase. Modus and the relaxation of the Phoenix group, such as Kovalev, collapsed moments after. People right now interrogate Kovalev's guns clothed. You're approximately a way to save you the upcoming calamity. However, he recognizes that there's not anything they could do. Shortly, all and sundry uncovered. The wave dies. Only some Phoenix individuals live on. Zero movements rapid, urging them to escape earlier than the High Minister's militants arrive. However, Angel refuses to leave without their useless colleagues, insisting on a right burial. Zero and Angel have a heated argument till Nova intervenes and shows that Brandon make the final selection. After a few concepts, Brandon defined that they had to get the server information from the state-of-the-art weapon. If they didn't achieve this, the High Minister might continue with the gun's improvement, possibly annihilating a town or perhaps a country, in 3 minutes. As a end result, Brandon directed Zero and Nova to the lab whilst telling the opposite three to switch their useless comrades' frame to the tunnel inside the lab. Nova defined that the weapon changed into 70% whole and that the preceding explosion changed into best. A small-scale check. Several international locations such as North Korea had formerly sourced uncooked elements for the bomb. Zero then requested if they might convey the whole server, to which Nova responded that it'd be tough without many motors. Finally, Brandon determined to add all the server information to a satellite TV for PC, permitting the United Nations to get admission to it. At that factor, dismantling the power might make it tough to expect whether or not any other institution might construct it. Shortly, the whole group amassed and Brandon defined his idea to add server information to a satellite TV for PC. Angel voiced situation, bringing up the prolonged system and the upcoming arrival of the High Minister's militant pressure. Despite this, Brandon insisted that it change into a hazard they had to take. Brandon gave them assignments after they agreed. Nova might manipulate server fax uploads whilst the others might installation ammunition traps and strategic positions. Nova in the end sought to touch depended on allies with the aid of using satellite TV for PC, hoping they may assist. However, he remained skeptical. Half-hour later, the server's fax ad had simplest reached 50%. Brandon then passed Nova his mobilar telesell smartphone, explaining that the primary name might detonate a tool with inside the hall and the second one to a bomb with inside the lab room. Shortly after, every group member took their assigned spots. Hera, a member who changed into nevertheless hurting from her brother's demise, decided to warfare with all her would, possibly in pursuit of vengeance. Moments afterwards, the top minister's militant squaddies regarded as motors broke through the barrier. Brandon's forces rallied effectively, neutralizing dozens of enemy squaddies. Make it take cover. Music. At one factor, Hera ran out of ammunition and obtained an order to retreat in the base. Here then have become trapped with the aid of using a soldier and fell into the water. Other squaddies surrounded Hera, however she cleverly claimed that they had been searching the incorrect girl. In a determined flow, Hera wielded her favorite all-weapon and defeated the opposed forces. Meanwhile, Zombie, Angel and Zero confronted a siege and ran out of ammunition. Brandon dropped from the rooftop simply in time, educating them to go back to base whilst he held off the attack. In a second disagreement, Angel faced an enemy soldier carrying out a livid duel that resulted with inside the lady's demise. Brandon and Zero in the end crossed paths. Zero sent Brandon to the kitchen as he entered the workplace to have interaction a collection of opposed squaddies. Despite this, Brandon encountered his percentage of opposing squaddies, 7 opposed squaddies, but superior on Nova. Nova, feeling crushed, made a determined aim, detonating the bombs hidden inside the hallway. Soon after, he instructed the squad that the ad changed into entire and counseled them to break out at once and reassemble on the appointed rendezvous spot. The scene then became to Hera, who determined herself encircled earlier than the lights went out. As Hera activated her flashlight, Severa squaddies at once surrounded and attacked her. Hera died tragically shortly. Brandon recommended the troops to retain in the direction of the rendezvous area. Gunfire staggered Brandon as he fled. Zero raced to his facet, telling him that the entirety changed into properly. Someone fired more than one pictures at Nova in every other place. However, Zombie and Angel rapidly removed the attacking squaddies. Soon all of Brandon's troops had congregated on the rendezvous factor. Nova then passed Brandon his telecell smartphone and told him to make the second one name which could detonate the bombs inside the lab. Sadly, Nova died from his accidents earlier than Brandon should make the decision in the stop. Brandon directed his troops to put together for the blast. Shortly, dozens of adversarial forces closed in. Brandon then directed the surviving troops to retreat to the tunnel, decided to repel the enemy warriors. However, Zero refused to depart his facet, telling him that it become he who had persuaded Brandon to return back, and Zero resolved to live with him. Finally, Brandon advised Angel and Zombie to head, emphasizing the urgency of having the server records to the United Nations. Brandon and Zero hastily superior into the open area, removing enemy infantrymen one after the other till their ammunition ran out and that they observed themselves below. CJ institution of reinforcements suddenly removed the adversarial forces. It seems that Nova had already contacted those reinforcements. They moved quickly to test on Nova and observed that he become nevertheless alive. In the aftermath, Brandon and Zero planned to go back to America. Zombie and Angel then expressed their appreciation for his or her assist. Thanks for looking. If you're new, don't neglect about to subscribe for extra of those recaps. Until subsequent time, have a pleasing day.